The wind cuts sharp across the open prairie, rattling the wooden shutters of a lonely sheriff's office on the edge of Willow Creek, a town that pretends peace but runs on old prejudice and deeper silence. Sheriff Elijah Boone leans against the doorframe, boots crossed, sipping black coffee that's gone cold. His badge catches the morning sun like a curse he can't take off. It's been a year since the fever took his wife. A quiet year. Too quiet. Elijah spends his days patrolling dust-bitten streets, nodding at folks who still can't quite look him in the eye. Not because he's the law, but because he's a black man with the law in his hands. Out here, that's a contradiction folks haven't made peace with. They smile tight, keep conversations short. Let him keep the peace, but never forget he doesn't belong to the real townfolk. He knows it, feels in the way his coffee's always poured last at the saloon, the way mothers pull their children close when he passes by. Still, he endures, keeps the badge polished, the streets safe, and his grief buried deep. The mail arrives at the morning stage, tossed unceremoniously onto his porch like trash. He flips through envelopes. Deputies report, wanted posters, and then an unexpected letter, wax-sealed and smelling faintly of lavender. He frowns. Inside, a brief note from Judge Carroll in Wichita. A mail-order bride was meant for a wealthy white rancher up in North Dakota. Only he turned her away when he saw she was half black. Returned like livestock, the judge had written. She's en route to Willow Creek, by mistake. Paperwork confusion. The judge figured Elijah might know what to do with her. Elijah exhales slowly. The injustice is subtle. Just another misplaced soul, dropped into a town where color decides character and women with children have no business being single. He crumples the letter, tosses in the stove, and stares at the flames. Not my problem, he tells himself, but it sits wrong in his gut. By evening, the streets are quiet, save for the distant creak of porch swings and dogs barking at shadows. Elijah walks a perimeter like always, boots thudding against the planks that creak like they remember better days. He sees young white boys laugh as they scratch slurs into the side of the general store, same ones they etched last summer. He watches Mr. Turner, the banker, cross the street to avoid walking beside Mariah, the colored seamstress. She acts like she doesn't notice. Elijah notices everything. Willow Creek doesn't need a spark to catch fire. It needs a reason. That reason's arriving tomorrow on the 9 a.m. stagecoach, carrying 2 babies, no husband, and a past that won't be so easily unloaded. Elijah Boone doesn't know it yet, but the moment that coach pulls into town, his quiet grief will collide with hers, and together they'll burn the silence the stagecoach rattles into Willow Creek under sky bruised with storm clouds, as if the heavens themselves are holding their breath. Elijah waits beside the post, arms folded, eyes scanning the coach like it's carrying dynamite instead of passengers. The door swings open, and out steps a young woman, shawl wrapped tight, face drawn but proud. In her arms, one bundled infant cries softly. The other clings to her skirts, no more than 2 years old, wide-eyed and silent. She doesn't speak right away. Neither does the crowd gathering across the street. Old men from the feed store stare openly. Mrs. Dalton from the church whispers something behind her hand. The child at her side repeats it louder, mulatto babies. The word hangs heavy in the air. Elijah steps forward. "You Mrs. Claire Du Bois?" he asks, voice steady. She nods. "Yes, sir. But I suppose I'm not Mrs. Anything now, am I?" Her voice is smooth but tired. Her accent's Creole New Orleans, maybe. She shifts the baby in her arms. The man who sent for me changed his mind when he saw my skin. Elijah doesn't flinch. "You and your baby's hungry?" She hesitates, then nods again. "Come on," he says, gesturing to the sheriff's office. "Ain't much, but it's warm." The murmurs grow louder as she follows. A rock skips across the dirt, hitting the coach wheel. Elijah doesn't turn, but his hand tenses near his belt. Inside, the air smells of tobacco and old paper. He clears off a desk. Claire feeds one of the twins from a bottle, her hands trembling just enough for him to notice. "I'm sorry," she says. "I didn't know where else to go." He watches her in silence for a long moment. You didn't do nothing wrong. But wrongness is already leaking into the seams of town. That night, the general store locks up early. The The schoolteacher doesn't wave on her way home. A note is nailed to the door of the sheriff's office before sunrise, scribbled in block letters. N.O. whorehouse for mixed-breed strays. Elijah tears it down with shaking hands. He knows this town, knows the way it punishes the quiet, the different, the colored, but something about this feels off, too calculated, too fast. Later, he runs into Mayor Amos Whitlock outside the church. Amos, clean-shaven and always too polite, smiles like a snake on Sunday. Elijah, he drawls, heard we got ourselves a guest. Shame about her situation, but I trust you'll handle it proper. Elijah narrows his eyes. Proper? I mean, Amos chuckles. It wouldn't do to let folks think we're running a halfway house for abandoned. He glances around, then lowers his voice. Colored girls and their mongrels. There it is. Not hidden, not subtle. A warning, wrapped in civility. Elijah says nothing, just walks away, jaw tight. But inside, a storm begins to stir. And as Claire settles her twins on a cot that night, Elijah sits on the edge of his desk, staring out the window, watching shadows shift. By the end of the week, the town's patience thins like old rope. Claire hasn't said much since her arrival. She spends her days cleaning the sheriff's office, rocking the babies to sleep in a borrowed cradle, trying to stay invisible. But in Willow Creek, her very existence is loud. Too loud. The grocer forgets her bread order. The schoolteacher flinches when she walks by. Even Reverend Bell, who once preached that all are equal unto God, gives her a cold nod and keeps moving. It's a slow erosion, but Elijah feels every crack forming. The final straw comes on a Tuesday morning. Claire's outside sweeping the front porch while the twins nap inside. Elijah's across the street when he hears the laughter. That cruel kind of laughter, the kind that cuts. 3 boys, all sons of councilmen, have surrounded her. One kicks over the pail of water. Another snatches the broom and tosses in the dirt. You lost, girl, sneers the tallest one. Ain't no plantation here for your kind. Claire says nothing, just bends to pick up the broom with trembling hands. That's when Elijah steps in. Go home, he says, voice low and even. Now. The boys snicker. We didn't touch her, the tall one shrugs. Ain't against the law to talk. It is when it's harassment. Elijah steps closer. Try me. They scatter, but not before one of them mutters, should have stayed a slave. Elijah watches him go, fists clenched at his sides. Inside, Claire won't meet his gaze. Don't fight for me, she whispers. It'll only make things worse. But that's exactly the problem. They're counting on silence. Later that day, Elijah storms into Mayor Whitlock's office. I want those boys reprimanded. Public apology, community labor, something. Amos reclines in his chair, calm as ever. Children are just that, children. Let's not stir up trouble over a little teasing. They weren't teasing. They were threatening. And you know it. The mayor smirks. Careful now. Sound like you're letting emotions cloud your judgment. Elijah slams his badge on the desk. I took an oath to uphold the law. All of it. For everyone. Amos stands slowly. And I took an oath to protect this town's values. Now you tell me, which one of us has more to lose? There it is again. That quiet threat. Not shouted, but sharpened. Elijah walks out. He doesn't sleep that night. Instead, he starts digging. He finds Mrs. Harlow, the laundress, who says her biracial niece was run out of town last spring under suspicious circumstances. He talks to Josiah Carter, the blacksmith, who recalls seeing the mayor's sons throw stones at a Cherokee boy last summer, while Amos looked on and said nothing. He speaks to a former deputy, now in Sagebrush, who admits he left because Amos had hands in things the badge couldn't touch. Each story adds weight to the truth Elijah already knows. This town isn't just biased, it's rotten. By Friday, Claire's cradle has been kicked over twice. The front window of the sheriff's office is shattered with a brick wrapped in a note that reads, "Send her back, or we will." That's not just racism. That's a warning. And Elijah's done waiting for permission. He pins the brick note on the bulletin board inside the office. Then he picks up his rifle, sets it beside his desk, and says to Claire, "They want a war silence. Let's give them a storm they can't ignore. The fire's lit now. And Elijah Boone doesn't back down. The sun beats down heavy on Willow Creek's main street, as if the town itself knows something's about to break. Sheriff Elijah Boone stands on the courthouse steps, his coat unbuttoned, his badge catching the light. Behind him, Claire clutches her twins, her eyes wide but steady. To her right, Josiah the blacksmith, Reverend Bell, guilty-faced, and Mrs. Harlow have all gathered, quiet allies waiting. Across the street, Mayor Amos Whitlock steps out of the saloon, flanked by Councilman Briggs and Marshal Royce, the state-appointed lawman who rarely lifts a finger unless Amos tells him to. Royce carries a smug grin, one hand resting casually on the butt of his revolver. "You call for a town meeting, Sheriff?" Amos says loud enough for the whole square to hear. "Didn't realize we were holding court over stray women and their bastard children." Laughter trickles through the crowd. Elijah doesn't blink. "I called a meeting," he says evenly, "because someone in this town threw a brick through the sheriff's office window, threatened a woman and her children, and I want to know who." Amos's smile is all teeth. "You really gonna play hero over some mail-order reject, Elijah? A woman with no husband, no papers, and no place here? We got standards in Willow Creek." Elijah steps down one stair. "Standards that let your son carve slurs into a schoolhouse wall? Standards that let your councilman's boys assault a woman in broad daylight?" Amos raises a brow. "You got proof of that?" "I do." The crowd stirs. Amos scoffs, but Elijah's hand goes to his pocket. He pulls out a worn envelope and holds it up. "Signed statements," he says, "from Josiah, Mrs. Harlow, and a traveling judge who's seen what kind of game you play. Sending girls like Claire into nowhere towns just to have them turn away and humiliated. You think that letter from Judge Carroll just found its way to me by chance? No, Amos. He knew you'd pull something like this, and he gave me backup." Amos's smile falters. Marshal Royce shifts uncomfortably. Elijah keeps going. "I also got a sworn account from Deputy Laramie, who left this town because you pressured him to look the other way when your boys ran that Cherokee child out of town last year. You remember that." A hush falls. Amos steps forward, eyes narrowed. "Now, wait a minute." Elijah holds up one hand. "I'm not finished." He turns and nods. A moment later, a tall man steps in the crowd, broad-shouldered, wearing the robes of circuit judge. Judge Carroll himself. Gasps ripple. "Mayor Whitlock," the judge says coldly, "I've reviewed Sheriff Boone's complaints, and I've seen enough to believe a formal investigation is required. Effective immediately, you are suspended from your post pending inquiry. Marshal Royce, if you interfere, you'll be answering to the state." Amos's face goes pale. "You son of a..." Elijah steps forward now, close enough to see the fury swimming in the mayor's eyes. "You try to break her," Elijah says quietly, "but all you did was show this town who you really are." The mayor lunges, but Royce catches him. Too late now to pick a side. The crowd's already murmuring. People backing away, eyes wide, reputations cracking. Elijah turns back to Claire. She's trembling, tears slipping down her cheeks, but this time it's relief, the kind that doesn't come often. Elijah lifts a brick note he pinned earlier and tosses it at Amos's feet. "You wanted silence," he says. "Now you get to listen." Amos Whitlock's voice cracks through the courthouse halls like a whip. "This is a setup? That judge, he's in Boone's pocket. This ain't legal." He's surrounded by townsfolk now, people who once nodded at his speeches and raised glasses at his bar. But none of them speak now, not with Judge Carroll standing firm, not with Elijah Boone holding the truth like a loaded weapon. Amos barrels forward, finger jabbing. "Where's your real evidence, Sheriff? You parade a colored woman and a few soft-hearted fools, and think that counts as justice? This is a good town, built by good men." "You mean white men?" Elijah says coldly. A hush ripples. "Isn't that right?" Elijah continues, stepping forward. "Because that's all you ever cared about, keeping the rest of us in line. You used fear, lies, that smile, but I dug deeper." He pulls out a second envelope. Judge Carroll nods. "This..." Elijah says, voice steady, is a letter from a young woman named Ruth Carter. She was 15 when she came to Willow Creek as a mail-order bride, same agency Claire used. She was half black. Her father was a Buffalo soldier. She never made it to her fiancé's door. She was met at the coach station by her deputy, the one you quietly let go last fall. He opens the letter. She said she was escorted straight to Mayor Whitlock's office, told her fiancé, changed his mind, offered her money to leave quietly. When she refused, she woke up the next morning in a storage barn outside town, bruised, bleeding, and alone. The deputy said she was lucky she wasn't lynched. Gasps, murmurs of disbelief. She never told anyone until now, but she sent this letter after hearing about Claire. She saw the story in a traveler's newspaper. That's what brought Judge Carroll down here, because there are patterns, and you, Amos, are the common thread. Amos's face is crimson. That's hearsay. That's not proof. Then the door creaks open. A figure steps in, weathered, sunburned, holding a thick black ledger book. It's Wyatt Laramie, former deputy, the one who vanished last fall. He raises the book. This is your handwriting, Amos. Receipts, payments, threats written down like notes from a meeting. You had a plan. All right, keep Willow Creek white. Clean, as you called it. Only thing is, you weren't cleaning. You were erasing. Amos stumbles back. This is slander. You'll all regret this. He turns to flee, but Royce grabs him by the collar. Sit down, Whitlock, the marshal mutters. You've embarrassed us badge enough. Amos fights, thrashing like a trapped animal. But the crowd isn't with him anymore. They're watching, stone-faced, disgusted. The mask has fallen. Elijah takes one last step forward. You played God with people's lives. You turned fear into law, but not anymore. A spatter of spit lands near Elijah's boots. Amos glares up at him from the floor, breathing hard. I made this town, he growls. You poisoned it, Elijah replies. Judge Carroll gestures to Royce. Take him to Sagebrush for processing. He'll answer to the state. As the mayor is dragged out, kicking, cursing, unraveling, the townspeople part like a wave. Nobody reaches for him. Nobody offers a kind word. And just like that, the man who ruled Willow Creek with charm and cruelty is done. Claire stands beside Elijah now, her hand in his. Behind her, the twins blink at the fading chaos with wide, innocent eyes. The storm is over, and the truth has taken root 3 weeks after Mayor Whitlock's arrest. Willow Creek is a different place. The saloon's laughter sounds lighter now, less cruel. The streets are quieter, not because people fear speaking, but because they're listening for the first time. And Elijah Boone, he's back in his uniform, but this time the badge sits heavier. Not with shame, but with earned pride. Whitlock's trial is scheduled in Sagebrush. Word as crime spread fast. Dozens of women writing letters, sharing stories, fragments of a bigger truth. The judge called it systemic racial exploitation disguised as civic duty. The headline on the state paper called it what it truly was: whitewash corruption unmasked in Willow Creek. The former mayor's accounts were frozen, his saloon seized, his family fled east, ashamed and silent. He sits in a cold cell now, surrounded by stone and steel, exactly the kind of place he once threatened others with. Public disgrace, financial ruin, no redemption, justice. Elijah walks through town with Claire on his arm. She no longer hides behind shawls or silence. She walks proud, her head held high, one twin on each hip, the other nestled Elijah's chest in a sling he stitched himself. People stopped him on the street now, not to whisper, but to apologize. Mrs. Kettle from the bakery offers warm cornbread. I was wrong, she says, handshaking. Didn't see it. Didn't want to. Reverend Bell hosts a service titled Reckoning and Grace. He weeps through half of it. Even Marshal Royce, once Whitlock's shadow, helps organize protection for the remaining women from Claire's mail-order registry, promising to investigate every unresolved case that passed through Willow Creek. Change doesn't happen overnight, but the walls are cracked, and sunlight's finally seeping in. One evening, Elijah finds Claire in the backyard, barefoot in the tall grass. The twins crawl around her. She watches them chase lightning bugs, her smile soft but distant. "You thinking about leaving?" he asks gently. Claire glances at him. "I thought I might, at first. Didn't think this place could ever feel like anything but a trap." She steps closer. "But then you stood up. For me. For all of us they tried to erase." Elijah looks at the babies. They need a place to grow up where their mother's worth isn't questioned. Claire smiles. They already have one. Right here. Because of you. A breeze stirs the trees. The town's quiet tonight. Peaceful. Earned. Elijah reaches into his coat pocket and pulls out something small, worn from his thumb, rubbing it raw. A silver ring. Claire gasps. "I know this wasn't how we planned it," he says, voice thick. "But the moment you stepped off that stagecoach, soaked to the bone and holding those babies like they were the last thing keeping you standing, I knew I was already yours." He kneels. "I'm not offering a rescue, just a future. One we build. One no man can tear down." Tears run down Claire's face, but she nods, laughing through them. "Yes, Elijah Boone. Yes." He slips the ring on her finger as the twins giggle behind them. And somewhere in the shadows of the town they saved, a window creaks shut. An old prejudice watches them and fades. Because hate can be loud, but love lingers. And in Willow Creek, it just found its voice.